Hey, what are you doing? Open up. Why don't you just stay here for a while? I was locked in the basement by my husband's child, Ethan. I tried to open the basement door many times, but it wouldn't budge. Originally, I had been in an accident and was using an electric wheelchair. So, I couldn't move well. It's cold. Well, of course. It's 28 degrees right now. Why are you doing this? Then, Ethan started laughing loudly. I've been irritated with you for a long time. What? Pretending to be a mother. You might as well become a mummy staying in a place like this, right? What's wrong with you? We're going on a trip for 3 nights and 4 days. So, try your best until we get back. Please, let me out of here. My cries of anguish did not reach Ethan. Only the sound of his footsteps fading away echoed. I had no choice but to despair, unable to do anything. 4 days after being locked up, Ethan returned from his trip. What is this? Realizing something was terribly wrong, he hurried to the basement. Tentatively, when Ethan looked into the basement, he was met with a shocking scene. While Ethan stood frozen, a grand act of revenge began. My name is Kim, and I work as a salesperson at a cosmetics company. I got married when I was 30. What was different about this marriage was that my husband, Steve, had a child from his former marriage. My parents opposed our marriage because of this. Marrying someone with a child will surely bring hardships. Your father is right. But I want to marry him. I pleaded for hours. Initially, they wouldn't agree, but I didn't give up, and eventually, they consented to the marriage. If you're that determined, I won't stop you. Thanks, Dad. The reason I chose Steve, who had a child, was because I felt very comfortable with him. From the first day we met, we shared common hobbies, such as outdoor activities, and got along well. Our meeting was at a bar I frequently visited. By chance, we sat next to each other and ordered the same drink, which led to a casual conversation. After seeing each other several times, we exchanged contact information. Soon after, my husband contacted me, and we went out for a meal. You brought a child? Actually, he's my child. Huh? Your child? His name is Ethan, and he's turning 10 this year. I see. I was at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond. Sensing this, my husband said something surprising. There's a reason I brought my son today, is because I'm serious about our relationship. I want to marry you someday. I had thought about dating, but I hadn't imagined it would lead to marriage. Being told this with a serious face, we started dating. Since then, we often went out together as 3. It seems like Ethan has warmed up to you. I hope so. Let's ask him. Ethan, come here for a second. What is it, Dad? Would you be happy if Kim became your mom? After a moment's pause, he smiled. I would be very happy. See? That's what he says. Yeah. I was incredibly happy, though a bit embarrassed. At this time, we had been dating for about half a year. A week later, I received a formal proposal, and we got married. After the marriage, the 3 of us rented a detached house. Looking up at our new home, I imagined a happy family life ahead. However, our life gradually began to take a strange turn. Although my relationship with the son had been good, he suddenly became cold towards me. I'm sorry, but it looks like I'll have to go on more business trips. Business trips? Is it long? Well, I don't think so, but I might be away from home more often. Although my relationship with Ethan had been good before the marriage, I was anxious about being left alone with him so soon after getting married. And then, one morning, as the days of spending time alone with Ethan increased, something happened. What's wrong? Aren't you going to eat? I don't want any. After that, he wouldn't even respond when spoken to. Suddenly finding myself in this situation made me wonder if I had done something wrong. So I decided to talk to my husband, who had just returned from a business trip. Aren't you worrying too much? It's sudden. If I did something wrong, I want to apologize. But you don't remember doing anything, right? Yes, but worrying too much might just make things weirder. Yeah, okay. At this point, I realized something. Recently, Ethan had been taking piano lessons, at my husband's suggestion. It turns out, my husband had also learned piano when he was in elementary school. He had told me that working with your hands is good for the brain. See you next week, Rebecca. Yes. See you then. Yeah. He was always smiling when it came to his piano teacher, Rebecca. Even observing his behavior recently, he seemed happiest when he was with her. Why? When my husband was home, Ethan would talk to me casually. But as soon as Steve went on a business trip, Ethan stopped talking to me. Even when he was at home, he would only come out of his room for meals and baths. It was as if he didn't hear me at all when I spoke to him. I tried talking to my husband again, but there was no sign that our relationship was improving. Life went on like this, and before I knew it, Ethan had grown up and gone to college. What should we do now? About Ethan? Yes. Before I knew it, we've gotten to this point. He's an adult now, not a child anymore. But still. My husband's point was to not worry too much about it. Of course, Ethan would eventually leave home and become independent. But I still wanted to improve our relationship. However, discussions with my husband always ended inconclusively. Unable to understand why Ethan might hate me, I decided to ask him directly. Is there something troubling you? Huh? Why are you asking me this all of a sudden? We haven't been talking much lately, and I thought maybe something happened. Ethan sighed heavily and answered reluctantly. Can you just not talk to me? I don't have anything to say to you. You don't have to say things like that. Then, Ethan said something shocking. I've hated you ever since I first met you. What? I don't like the way you look down on people. I was at a loss for words after being spoken to so harshly. Then, my husband, noticing something was wrong, came over. What's going on here? Nothing. That can't be true. What did you say to your mom? I just said I hate her. What's wrong with that? You said what? Apologize to your mom. My husband spoke sternly, trying to admonish Ethan. However, Ethan had already begun to show defiance even towards his father. Why should I? Are you being deceived by her? What are you saying? That's ridiculous. Ethan stood his ground and resisted. If you're going to say that, I'll just leave. That's fine, right? Hey, where are you going? Wait. Ethan left the house. This incident only made his rebellion escalate further. Aren't you going to chase after him? It's okay. Let's just leave him be for now. He'll come back eventually. No matter how harshly he spoke to me, Ethan was still our dear son. I wanted to chase after him, but I chose to wait, believing he would return soon. However, Ethan did not come back the next night. Unable to stay put, I went outside. I thought to myself, he couldn't possibly be near the house. Regretting my impulsiveness for coming out without a plan, I then saw Ethan emerging from a house in front of me. I quickly hid behind a tree. What is he doing here? I stayed hidden until Ethan disappeared into the darkness. When I checked the house he came out of, it turned out to be the piano school he had attended years ago. It was night, but unknowingly, I had come to a familiar road. It had been years since I last visited here. However, I couldn't understand why Ethan had come out of there. Where have you been? I hurried back home and questioned Ethan. I thought I saw you around the piano school earlier. Piano? At that moment, his voice seemed to falter a bit. What were you doing? Why would I go to Rebecca's? That response made me realize I hadn't mistaken him for someone else. My son stopped playing the piano when he graduated from elementary school. Given that he referred to her name instead of as a teacher, it was clear they hadn't met just yesterday or today. I see. Seemingly annoyed, he muttered under his breath. Just shut up, will you? Even though it was already quite difficult for me mentally, his words still shocked me. Then, as if on cue, my husband came home. As soon as Ethan realized his father was home, he retreated to his room. When Steve entered the living room, he looked somewhat exasperated. Did he say something to you again? Huh? You can tell? I can tell just by looking at your face. So, what happened? I told my husband about what Ethan had said to me earlier. Steve then placed a comforting hand on my shoulder and spoke kindly to me. I'm truly sorry. Why are you apologizing? It's partly my fault for not being able to listen properly today. I've been away from home on business trips too often. But it still hurts when he says things like that. As I murmured this, Steve was about to head to Ethan's room. Wait a minute. I grabbed his arm to stop him. Why stop me? I need to talk to him. Just listen. I stopped him because I remembered something I had forgotten to mention. It was about Ethan coming out of the piano school. It wasn't a mistake, and when I asked him about it, he called her by name. Piano? He used to go to lessons around elementary school, right? Yes. I don't know when it started, but they seem to get along well. But why would he? I can't figure out why. That's why I think we should just watch the situation for a bit. Okay, if you say so. I desperately wanted to know the reason. Maybe it was the cause of his harsh attitude towards me. My wish was to resolve this issue and improve our relationship with Ethan. I really want to do something about it. Right. I'll help too. Let's work on this together. Yeah. Though I said this to my husband, I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story, leading me to investigate Rebecca. For now, we decided to simply observe Ethan. But when things go wrong, they really seem to spiral. On my way home from work, disaster struck. I was hit by a car that ran a red light while I was crossing the street. Are you okay? Sorry for this to happen. What are you talking about? I'm just glad you're safe. But my legs. I had sustained a severe back injury, resulting in spinal cord damage that left me unable to move my legs. So, you mean you can't walk anymore? I nodded silently. I would end up being hospitalized for about half a year. And with you so busy at work, for this to happen. It's not your fault, Kim. But you have a business trip tomorrow, right? I'll be fine, you should go home and prepare. That's true, but I'm really okay. All right. Call me if anything happens. My husband left the room. I bit my lip to stop myself from crying. The next day, Ethan came to visit me in the hospital. How are you feeling? I can't move my legs, but other than that, I'm okay. Then Ethan smirked unpleasantly. Can't walk, huh? Now you're completely useless. You don't have to say that. Maybe Dad will divorce you now. I wouldn't mind. His verbal abuse continued. Without retorting, I absorbed his words like a punching bag. Finally, as if satisfied, Ethan turned to leave the room. Just before exiting, he looked back and said, "Well, do your best. I'm not into caregiving, you know." All I could do was watch his back as he left. Alone in the hospital room, I lay down and secretly shed tears. I had never felt such pain in my life before. Then, as if by fate, my husband came to visit. I have something important to discuss today. Important? I braced myself. Ethan's words lingered in my mind, making me fear that Steve might bring up divorce. However, what he said next completely took me by surprise. Actually, I've been thinking about buying a new house. Our current one isn't wheelchair accessible, and I know it's been tough for you, right? That might be true, but to go to such lengths for me. It's okay. Of course, there was something that worried me. It was about Ethan. But what will Ethan say? I mentioned it to him, but he seemed disinterested. We hardly talk these days. I see. During my hospital stay, Steve had been looking for a new house. It was true that our old home was inconvenient now that I was in a wheelchair. Building a new house would have taken too much time. By the time Steve visited me 2 weeks later, he had already purchased a house. I've already bought the house. Already? Found a great model house in a nice location. I decided on the spot. All this for me. I just want you to live as comfortably as possible. Thank you so much. A surge of emotions welled up inside me. Upon being discharged and arriving at our new home, I was amazed. It was more magnificent than I had imagined. Nice house, isn't it? Yes, it's wonderful. And this house even has a basement. A basement too. But there was more to be surprised about. Oh right, there was something else. Saying that, Steve went to the back of the room and returned. Could it be? Yes, this is an electric wheelchair. Oh my God. With this, you can move around more freely, right? I can't thank you enough. I did this on my own initiative. I hoped this would lessen the burden on my husband. Though I wouldn't suddenly be able to do everything. I was determined to try and even go outside. From that day on, I started doing things for myself. Ethan seemed displeased to see me becoming more active. Move out of the way. You're such a nuisance. Then, he kicked my wheelchair. That's dangerous. Don't be here if you can't do anything. I was just trying to lessen the burden. As if that changes anything? You don't have to be so cruel. Your existence itself is a burden, so what's the point? I tried to return to my room, but he blocked my way. Where do you think you're going? Just back to my room. Move out of the way. We're not done talking. I have nothing more to say. I had hoped for a relationship improvement, but perhaps this was the end. I had reached my limit. Running away? Think what you want. It's fine by me. Why did Dad even marry someone like you? Then, he kicked my wheelchair again and returned to his room upstairs. For a while, he stopped talking to me. This silence was somewhat a relief. Sorry, but I've got another business trip. Understood. I'm sorry, especially since we haven't resolved things with Ethan. It's okay. I'll call if anything happens. As Steve left for his trip, life with Ethan resumed. With Steve gone, Ethan often stayed out. Now, I found myself anxious about when he would return. However, Ethan didn't come home until after I had gone to bed that night. The next morning, I woke to loud noises coming from upstairs. It seemed he had returned while I was asleep, but there was no sign of him leaving his room. Well, time to get to work today. I was determined. After becoming disabled, I thought I'd have to quit my job. But I was recognized for my previous work and told I could continue working remotely. I turned on my computer to start working and realized something was missing, the mouse. Where did I put it? I remembered that computer peripherals were stored in the basement. Given my son's current attitude, asking him for help seemed futile, so I decided to go myself. The electric wheelchair really does make things easier. Though reluctant, I didn't want to postpone it and headed to the basement. The access was through a door behind the staircase. Slowly descending the ramp, I reached for a box in the back. As I placed the box on my lap to return upstairs, I heard someone coming down the stairs. Thinking Ethan had finally woken up, I saw him coming down the ramp. "What are you doing down here?" "Just looking for something." A part of me felt a little happy, thinking he came to help. "Then, I'll help you." Saying that, he closed the door. Shocked, I froze for a moment but quickly realized this was bad. Not only was I trapped, but it was also freezing. Checking the wall-mounted thermometer, it read 28 degrees. "What are you doing?" "Open up." "Huh? Why don't you stay down here for a while?" No matter how much I tried, the basement door wouldn't budge. Having been in an accident, I was using an electric wheelchair, making any movement difficult. "It's cold." "Well, of course. It's 28 degrees right now." "Why are you doing this?" Then, Ethan started laughing loudly. "I've been irritated by you for a long time." "What?" "Pretending to be a mother. You might as well become a mummy staying in a place like this, right?" "What are you thinking? We're going on a trip for 3 nights and 4 days. So, try your best until we get back. Please, let me out." "All right." After waiting for a while, Ethan came back with something in his hand. The door cracked open slightly, and through the gap, he threw in 2 bags of snacks and a bottle of water. "You expect me to survive on this? That should be more than enough." "Well, this is. Goodbye. For now. Just open it." My cries of anguish didn't reach my son. All I could hear were his footsteps fading away. I was left with no choice but to despair. It seemed he wasn't seriously intending to endanger my life. I had to figure out how to survive the next 4 days. I need to find a way to stay warm. I desperately searched for anything useful. After rummaging through cardboard boxes, I found an old blanket. With nothing else available, I covered myself with it to withstand the cold. Without any means to call for help, the 4 days passed, and Ethan returned from his trip. A grand act of revenge was about to begin. I secretly watched Ethan's movements. "Now, what will you do?" As Ethan headed towards the basement and cautiously opened the door. "What is this?" The stench was so strong, it could be detected from afar. In a panic, he entered. "You've got to be kidding. She died." I shouldn't have listened to them. At the back of the basement was something wrapped in a blanket. Ethan probably thought it was me. However, it was a trap set by me and another person. "What are you doing there?" Ethan quickly turned around. "Why are you here?" "Why?" "What do you mean why?" "Don't mess with me. That's my line. You shouldn't do such things without being prepared for the consequences." "What? Are you mocking me?" Just as Ethan approached me. I never thought it would come to this. "Dad, why are you here? You were supposed to be on a business trip." "I came back because I couldn't get in touch. Then I found out she was trapped in the basement. Indeed, I was rescued by my husband's efforts. It was just yesterday that I was freed from the basement." To deceive Ethan, my husband and I placed kitchen waste in a bag to mimic the appearance of decay, and used a blanket to resemble me. The plan was a complete success. "So, who is this person you mentioned?" "Huh? Did I say something like that? Don't play dumb. I really don't know what you're talking about." That's when I had a realization. Could it be Rebecca? Ethan stepped back. It was clear I had hit the nail on the head. "You did mention coming out of the piano school before, right?" "Yes." "They must have been sneaking around behind our backs." "Then let's verify it." "Huh? You know her contact information, right?" Let's invite her over. Wait a minute. Just call her. Ethan contacted Rebecca. Soon after, the doorbell rang. Ethan went to greet her, and they both headed to the basement together. Now, let's hear the explanation. It was natural for me not to meet my eyes in such an awkward situation. I just wanted Dad to be happy. What's so good about her? You really don't understand anything. What do you mean? I chose Kim because she accepted me for who I am. But Rebecca would be no different, right? Then why go through all this? You think I'd fall for someone like that? I thought we should hear it straight from her. Wait. Since she's here, let's ask Rebecca. She was taken aback, clearly not expecting to be the focus. All eyes were on her. I was using Ethan. I only said to scare her a bit. I never thought it would lead to locking her in a basement. I had heard some things about Rebecca when Ethan was attending piano lessons. It seems she had been inviting him out for meals several times even before I met him. Despite his rejections. After we got married, he started to refuse rides to and from the lessons. That's why I decided to drive him, partly to keep an eye on him. Indeed, I was using Ethan. But I never wanted to be with him. What? I just couldn't stand seeing the person I liked happy. So, you saying you wanted to be with Dad was? I'm sorry. That was a lie. Then, I remembered something I had looked into before. It wouldn't have worked out anyway. What do you mean? Because Rebecca is married. That's a lie. Is that right? Rebecca nodded silently. Ethan couldn't have known. Rebecca's husband was also working away from home. Then, what was all this for? Seeing Ethan's dejected figure, I whispered something to my husband. I see. That makes sense. What are you talking about? You liked Rebecca, didn't you? What? Ethan looked up quickly after initially looking down. No, that's not it. Thinking about it, there were many odd things. You said it was for my sake, but there were other ways to handle this. Rebecca, you knew about Ethan's feelings, right? Yes. It's such a pity. You were just used for revenge. After all this time, I was doing it for Rebecca. Ethan eventually sat down, overwhelmed. Steve placed a hand on his shoulder, and Ethan's expression seemed to soften a bit. Perhaps he was hoping for some sympathy. We, as parents, had decided to be strict with our son for his own good. It's regrettable, but you're an adult. Being deceived doesn't excuse your actions. So, leave this house immediately. Wait. Isn't that too harsh? Harsh? Consider what you've done before saying that. For someone like her. I had no intention of holding back either. What you did to me could be considered kidnapping. There was a risk to my life. That's why you panicked, right? Cam is right. Do you think we can live with someone dangerous like that? Ethan might have thought it was a minor act, but it was a serious crime. It was a sufficient reason to kick him out. Then let's give him a choice. Either we call the police now, or he leaves this house. That's a good idea. So, what's it going to be? Giving Ethan a choice was deliberate, but he never really had an option. I understand. I'll leave. All right. I will still pay for your tuition until you graduate. You'll have to figure out the rest on your own. And don't ever come back to this house. Isn't that a bit too much? Would you prefer to be reported? Hearing that, Ethan looked down and fell silent again. Rebecca. What should I do now? He was seeking help from Rebecca. But her demeanor was no longer quiet, anger towards Ethan was palpable. You really screwed things up. Who asked you to go this far? I never thought you were this foolish. But, I just did what you said. Did what I said? I never told you to commit a crime. What's that supposed to mean? You deceived me first. A pointless argument unfolded before us. If you want to fight, do it outside. It's just a nuisance here. Exactly. If you two continue to cause a disturbance, I'll really call the police. With my intervention, the two of them regained some composure and left the house, continuing their argument. Part of me wondered if kicking Ethan out was too harsh. But what Ethan did to me was a crime. He needs to understand the gravity of his actions and live a righteous life. This was the right thing to do, wasn't it? Yes. You don't need to worry about it, Kim. But still, it's okay. If we coddle him, he'll never truly grow up. You're right. After leaving the house, my son started living alone in an apartment. As my husband had promised, we continued to pay for his tuition. But he was earning his living expenses on his own. Apparently, one part-time job wasn't enough, so he seems to be juggling several jobs. There was one time when he called me. I'm sorry for everything. Could you lend me some money? Why should I do that? You chose to leave this home. So, it's like that, huh? What are you talking about? It's always been about Dad, not me, right? If that's how you feel, don't bother calling me again. Like I'd ever contact you again. He hung up. Ethan was turning 20 this year, missing out on what should be the best time of his life. He must accept the consequences of his actions as his punishment. Rebecca moved away quietly, and now her whereabouts are unknown. Finally, things have settled down. Yes. Let's look forward to our future together. Thus, life for just the two of us began, and surely, happiness will continue to follow.
I'm getting a divorce and starting my life over. Get out with that chubby child of yours.
My husband, without being asked, arrogantly narrated the beginning of his relationship with his lover and announced our breakup. The story was so full of misunderstandings that both my daughter and I were speechless in disbelief. Not knowing anything is a sin. Okay? You. Don't be surprised. That woman is... My name is Veronica. At the age of 40, I harbor resentment towards my expanding waistline that grows fuller with each passing year. I think it's time to start writing in my room, beat the flab, and go on a diet. This is a story related to my diet. A few years ago, I lived happily with my husband and daughter. The only thing that worries me is that my daughter Olivia is glued to the smartphone I bought her because she has to go to extra tutoring classes. However, that wasn't a significant issue. I find my daughter's slightly rebellious phase as she enters middle school endearing. I thought our family was happy and thriving. One day, as soon as my husband came home from work,
Starting today, my dinner can be something like rabbit food,
he declared. What? What? That crunchy stuff? You mean cereal? I asked.
No, not that. I prefer a plant-based diet. Make it vegetable-focused,
he said. Even though he mentioned a plant-based diet, he would always eat instant noodle or sweets after meals. With such a fussy eater, even though he's a grown adult, I wonder what kind of plant-based diet could be served to a husband who can't eat bell peppers. Even if I serve plenty of vegetables as instructed, I can't help but think, he'll just eat up ending cup noodles anyway. Why suddenly pretend to be a vegetarian?
I'm not trying to be a vegetarian. I just thought I'd lose some weight.
My husband's words made my daughter and I burst out laughing. You couldn't even stick to abstinence from alcohol, so don't suddenly go for an extreme diet. Despite our opposition, my husband seemed determined to go on a diet. Thinking he would get bored in a few days, we prepared a plant-based diet to support him. However, surprisingly, this time he stuck with it without getting bored. He started meal restrictions, muscle training, night running, and even going to the gym. His once symbolic middle-aged paunch was gradually getting slimmer. This surprised both my daughter and me. We were puzzled, wondering about the change in his mindset from being someone skilled at giving up after a few days. This time, since he continued to abstain from alcohol, we couldn't help but wonder if during the company health check he was told that he has some illness that he hasn't shared with us, or if there are health concerns he's keeping to himself. "What kind of change in mindset?" I asked, but Arnold replied,
"I just want to look cool."
That was the only surprising answer I received. Well, I'm a little concerned about it, but if it's a healthy and reasonable diet, I should support it. With that in mind, to assist with my husband's diet, I've been searching for healthy recipes, but as he loses weight, his eccentric behaviors become more noticeable. In the morning, after returning from running and preparing for work, my husband, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, would smile while fixing his hair. Holding a smartphone, he would imitate the trendy hairstyles from the searched images. He started buying clothes on his way home from work, and he began wearing accessories. However, his sense of style seems to be stuck around the second year of middle school. He favors t-shirts with dragon designs and likes to wear chunky chain necklaces, which my daughter finds uncool and very unpopular. Even neighbors started making somewhat rude comments like, "Has your husband recently changed a lot? Is everything okay? Sorry to ask, but is he having an affair? Or, no offense, but with that kind of fashion, is he really not having an affair?" These were some of the somewhat impolite things people said. But even my daughter asked, "Dad, you're not having an affair, right?" As she raised suspicions about her dad possibly having an affair, I, initially thinking his appearance might deter women, grew uneasy, considering the possibility of some curious individuals. One day during a holiday, my husband, who usually stayed home, began going out more to the gym and for runs, since starting his diet. On that particular day, he stood in front of the bathroom mirror, wearing a white suit. The appearance of a belated groom or perhaps an outdated dancer made me doubt if this was truly our bathroom. "Are you going somewhere today?" I couldn't help but ask.
"Just shopping with a friend."
I thought it was a lie. "Oh, who is it?" I inquired.
"My boss."
A male boss, right? It's surprising to treat him as a friend, but going out with a guy and dressing up in a suit?
"Sorry, I'm running late, so I have to go."
Without giving a straightforward answer to my question, my husband hastily left the house. Needless to say, I suspected the possibility of an affair, as everyone said, because of his uncomfortable attitude. When I thought it might be suspicious if he came home late at night, my husband returned at 3 p.m. I wondered if he would return so early if he were having an affair, considering it was earlier than the curfew when our daughter was in elementary school. It might be my own unfounded assumption, but he's meeting with someone he can't usually spend time with. Isn't it normal to want to spend as much time together as possible? I've never cheated, and there's no one around me who has, so I regret only having knowledge from TV dramas. If it's not an affair, I can't understand why he came home unusually cheerful. However, from that day on, my husband never parted with his smartphone, and he started taking his diet more seriously than ever. One day,
"I've lost a lot of weight, and I need to start adding some meat to my diet,"
he said. So for dinner, I served a meat dish.
"I measured my weight earlier, and it turns out I gained weight, so I don't need this after all,"
he said, leaving the hamburger I made entirely uneaten and pushing it onto our daughter. Despite drinking beer every day, he now drinks carbonated water. His thoroughness is almost like he's a model or something. As a result, our daughter, who was forced to eat meals left by him, started gaining weight in stark contrast to him. I say she can leave the portions he pushes onto her, but Olivia says, "I don't want to leave the food you cooked." She ends up eating the food, so I feel sorry for her. At this rate, because of my husband, our daughter will end up becoming chubby. However, my husband appears indifferent. Recently, he's been taking actions that imply he has no intention of concealing an affair, like making late-night phone calls and arriving home with a bag from a women's accessories brand. My daughter seems to have noticed and refers to her father with vulgar words like, "that jerk of a dad." Well, it's true, so I'll forgive her. Gradually, my husband has become more arrogant, specifying his meal preferences, and he eats the vegetables he brought home or complains if there's no carbonated water in the fridge.
If I get fat, it's your fault.
He started getting angry and throwing things. His transformation is so extreme that I wonder if he's been possessed by a diet ghost. It's possible that even his brain capacity has gone on a diet. My husband, who lost about 30 kilograms, says,
If only you were a bit more beautiful. Don't stand next to me. It lowers my status.
Misleading statements started to increase. I don't want to be told that my status is lowering by a man who, no matter how much weight he loses, looks like a sleepy gorilla. Gradually, my husband's words turned into a personal attack on me, and one day he says something like this.
I've got a new girlfriend, so I guess we're done with the family for today.
I was annoyed by my husband, who was boasting with a smug look, and even though neither my daughter nor I asked, he began recounting the story of how he met his girlfriend. According to my husband, fate brought them together just before he started his diet. One night, while drinking at the lounge of a hotel used for business entertainment, my husband fell in love at first sight with a woman at a distant table. Desperately striking up a conversation, they even exchanged contact information. When the truth came out, his companion turned out to be the daughter of a certain well-known company, naturally wealthy. Additionally, she was beautiful and slender, like a charming young woman. It seems my husband wanted to match up to her, so he started improving himself. After losing weight, he revamped his fashion and chose a white suit, intending to convey the message. My confession is tailor-made to suit you. In response to his feelings, she replied, I love your childlike purity. The two of them became a couple, and recently, he successfully proposed. He is now keeping quiet that he is married, and he has even taken off his ring in front of her to hide this fact. He's afraid of being exposed as married, fearing that it might make her dislike him.
I finally found someone I care about,
my husband said, tears welling up in his eyes. Well, I know the whole story, but oh well.
I'm getting divorced and starting over in life. Leave this house with that chubby child of yours.
With a confident gaze, he stared us down and displayed a triumphant expression. Our daughter, insulted as a chubby child, had veins of anger visible on her face. You really don't know, do you? Upon our daughter's words, my husband had a blank expression.
Know what?
He asked in return. I've long noticed that you were having an affair. I've been gathering information for the divorce, so I know everything about the current situation, even the things you don't know. But Mom, Dad says she's his soulmate. Maybe it's okay not to know, you know. True. When our daughter glanced at him and smiled, my husband, looking flustered, eagerly took the bait.
Hold on. What do you know about me and her? Is there something going on?
If she's your soulmate, I don't think it's a big deal, right? That's right, Mom. As my daughter and I smirked, my husband impatiently urged me to hurry up and talk. I found out through a detective's investigation. Did you know your girlfriend is a really famous person?
What are you talking about?
In response to my question, my husband looked at me with a puzzled expression. That girl underwent surgery to become a woman, you know. Originally, she was a man. She's so cute that she became popular among young people for her social media and makeup tutorial videos. Olivia was following her too, it seems. My husband stood there, looking dumbfounded, as if he didn't understand what was being said. He's not familiar with social media or the internet. He mostly only reads the news. So, it's not surprising if he didn't know about her existence. I didn't know either. Look, see? This is Dad's girlfriend, right? Saying so, my daughter showed her father the top screen of his girlfriend's social media. On the profile, it was written, I used to be a boy, but now I'm a woman. Moving forward, I'll continue to work on myself and strive to embrace my feminine side even more. While technically being the person my husband had an affair with, she herself sees him as a single man. Looking at her profile and considering the challenges she has faced in her past, rather than harboring any resentment, it makes me want to support her.
Really?
He muttered, still glued to our daughter's phone, seemingly bewildered by the information he had just received. He scrolled through several photos of her, attempting to find any distinctions from his lover. Well, Olivia and I were planning to proceed with a divorce, so you don't need to worry about us. My husband, who had been told that his wife and daughter intended to abandon him, seemed shocked, despite being the one who initiated the divorce. It was ironic how he didn't want to be abandoned, even though he was willing to abandon us. That's right, Dad. If you're so nonchalant about your destined partner, we won't say anything. And just be happy with her.
No, I mean, I thought she was a girl. If that's the case, I'd rather live with you guys.
What? You claim to love her so much, but now you say if she used to be a man, you'd lose interest? Ugh, seriously. Your affection is unbelievably shallow. Ah, so that's why he tried to abandon us. As soon as he learned the true gender of his destined partner, my husband turned his back on her. Both my daughter and I felt genuine contempt. Whether she used to be a man or whatever, if you've come to love someone to the point of considering abandoning your family, then cherish them till the end. It's not just about us, but isn't it rude to play with someone's feelings?
Well, it's a bit different from that.
In response to my sermon, my husband looked visibly unsettled. What's the difference? Look at her post. Isn't this the day you proposed to her? I showed him a post that she likely wrote on the day he proposed, saying, I'm happy to meet someone who accepts all of me. I had given up on living with someone, but now I want to become a new me, supporting each other with my important partner. The post also included a photo of a ring, presumably the one he gave her. According to the detective's investigation, she had revealed she was originally a man when they first met. But my husband, probably intoxicated, took it as a joke and said,
Then we can be good friends.
The girl, often criticized for her past, was deeply moved by his words and accepted his vigorous advances. She went into the relationship believing that he had accepted all of her. It seems like she spoke about meeting a wonderful partner, expressing how happy she was in videos on social media and among people around her. She probably came to love my husband, who may not be cool at all with his face and fashion, because she felt he accepted all of her. She seems so pitiful that it makes me want to cry. I tell my husband the stories that my daughter and I know without holding anything back.
I messed up. What'd I do?
My husband crumbled to his knees.
It seems like I misunderstood her. Shouldn't we give it another try?
My husband says, but there's no way I would go along with such an invitation. I actually wanted to divorce as soon as I found out about the affair, but I just hesitated because it took time to look into alimony and find a good detective. It's not like I have any sentimental feelings. It was easy for me and my daughter. No, you will live the rest of your life alone, I told my husband. I'm not going to follow a man who was willing to easily discard me and our daughter. Moreover, misunderstanding her is just too rude. My daughter and I ignored my husband's attempts to stop us and left the house as we were told. Afterward, my husband confessed everything to his girlfriend, apologized, and sought separation. However, she got furious, and naturally, it turned into a dispute. Hiding the fact that he was married was awful, and considering she had been honest about her gender, I understand why she would want to express her thoughts. In the end, my husband turned her parents against him, and she, having a good lawyer on her side, demanded compensation for violating her chastity. But the story doesn't end there. She had reported on social media that she had a partner, and then she posted again on social media that she had broken up with her partner. Although she didn't mention names, she poured out the details of how they reached the breakup on social media. Looking back, posting such revealing content might have been the lawyer's idea. After all, she didn't know that my husband was married. If the details of this situation became known to the public, she might be viewed with suspicion for possibly knowing about the affair. As a famous person, she might face public outrage. As a precaution, she might have been advised to actively communicate to the public that she genuinely didn't know he was married. The video where she openly talked about everything was both too pitiful, bringing tears, and likely difficult for her to share. However, by telling her story, almost everyone sided with her. On the other hand, my husband was identified from her posts, and he faced intense backlash from her fans on the internet. His face photo became widespread, and it seems that malicious individuals even visited the company. Thanks to this, my husband was viewed with disdain by female colleagues at work, labeled as a cheating man, and subjected to gossip. There were even fans of the girl within the company, and he seemed to have experienced an uncomfortable atmosphere, being criticized as a man who lacked understanding of gender. And in a moment of impulsiveness, he resigned from the company. However, finding a new job for a middle-aged man who isn't proficient with computers is not so simple. Currently, he's making a living with Uber Eats and part-time jobs while also paying compensation and child support to us. Occasionally, he falls behind on payments, and at such times, my daughter goes to angrily confront him about abandoning his responsibilities as a parent. My daughter is strong. I was told to leave, but during the asset division in the divorce proceedings, I outsmarted my husband, and the house remained ours. Originally, I had a job, so as long as we have the house, life with my daughter is not particularly difficult. Even my daughter, I thought we'd have trouble making ends meet without him, but it turns out we're stronger together than I thought. She laughed. Since separating from my husband, it seems like our eating habits have gone back to normal, and as a result, my daughter has also slimmed down. As two women, the only trouble we face is dealing with pests, like bugs. We always play rock, paper, scissors to decide who tackles the extermination. However, gradually, my daughter has become less afraid of killing bugs. As a parent, I worry about the future of my overly resilient daughter. Mom, aren't you going to remarry? Although my daughter asks me such questions, for the time being, I want to cherish the delicate period my daughter is going through and prioritize our time as a mother and daughter duo. In fact, I'd be fine with just the two of us forever. Living together as women is somewhat carefree and comfortable. Honestly, I prefer the ease of our current life over when I was married. I hope to continue spending relaxed and peaceful days with my daughter in the future. Well, I'm off to work again today.